Hey guys, it's Dragon Blood here, and today I am here with Dr. Dark, and we're going to be reading some creepypastas.
Hey guys.
Okay, so today, first up, what do we got? Dr. Dark?
Ticci Toby, the original story.
Okay, let's read this thing. The long road home seemed to go on and on. The road continued to outstretch in front of the vehicle endlessly.
The light that shone through the branches of the tall green trees danced across the window in random patterns, every once in a while, obnoxiously shining in your eyes.
The surrounding was full of deep green trees, forming a forest around the road. The only sound was the sound of cars' engines. As it travelled down the path, it was peaceful and right off a serene feeling.
Although the ride seemed like a nice one, it lacked every form of nice for both passengers.
The middle-aged woman behind the steering wheel had a neat, short brown hair that fit her complexion quite well. She wore a green V-neck t-shirt and a pair of blue jeans. Diamond-studded earrings decorated each of her ears, which partially showed from behind her haircut. She had deep green eyes, which were brought out by her shirt, and the lighting just seemed to make them more noticeable. There wasn't much significance to her appearance. She just looked like any average mother that you'd see on TV shows and such. But one thing for sure made her different from those average mothers, and that was the dark bags under her eyes.
Her facial expression was gloomy and sad, although she generally looked like one who smiled a lot.
She would sniffle every once in a while, and occasionally glance back in the rearview mirror to look back at her son in the back seat. He was hunched over partially, his arms tight around his chest, his head pressed against the closed window.
The boy lacked any normal appearance. Anyone could blandly see that something was wrong with him. His messy brown hair went in every which way, and his pale, almost grey skin was brought up by luminescent lighting. His eyes were dark, unlike his mother's, and he wore a white t-shirt and scrub pants that had been provided to him by the hospital. The clothes he had worn before were so shredded and bloody stained that they weren't wearable anymore.
The right side of his face bared a few cuts along with his split eyebrow. His right arm was bandaged up all the way up to his shoulder, which had been shredded when his right side had hit the shattered glass.
His injuries appeared to be painful when he really couldn't feel a thing. He never could feel a thing. That was just one of the glories about being him. One of the many challenges he had to face growing up was growing up with the rare disease that caused him to be completely numb towards pain. Never before had he felt himself get hurt. He could have lost an arm or felt nothing. That and the other major disorders he had faced was the one that deemed him many insulting nicknames in the short time he had attended grade school before he was moved to homeschooling with his Tourette's syndrome, which caused him to tick and twitch in ways which he couldn't control. He would crack his neck uncontrollably and twitch every once in a while. The kids would tease him and call him Ticci Toby and mock with exaggerated twitching and laughing. It got so bad he turned to homeschooling. It was too hard for him to be in a common learning environment with seemingly every kid poking or more like stabbing fun at him.
Toby stared blankly out the window. His face was empty of any able emotion. And every few minutes, his shoulder, arm, or foot would twitch. Bump that the car tires hit made his stomach turn.
Toby Rogers was the boy's name, and the last time Toby remembered riding a car was when it crashed.
That's all he thought about, unconsciously replaying everything he had remembered before he blacked out, over and over and over again.
Toby had been the lucky one when his sister hadn't been so lucky. When the thought of his sister came, he couldn't help it but let his eyes begin to tear up. The horrible memories replayed in his mind. Her screaming that had been cut off when the front of the car was smashed in. It all went blank for a moment before Toby opened his eyes to see his sister's body, her forehead pierced with the glass shards. Her hips and legs were crushed under the force of the steering wheel, her torso pushed in from the late inflated airbag. This was the last thing he had seen of his dear old sister.
The road home continued on for what seemed like forever. It took so long to get home due to his mother wanting to avoid passing the site of the deathly crash.
When the surrounding gave in into a familiar neighborhood, they had both been more than ready to get out of the car and step back into their own home.
It was an older neighborhood, with quaint little houses all next to each other. The car drove in front of a little blue house with white window panes.
Quickly noticed the old vehicle that was parked in front of the house, and a familiar figure who stood up in the driveway. Toby felt automatic anger and frustration take over him at the sight of his father who wasn't there.
His mother pulled the car up into the driveway beside him before turning off the engine and turned about and faced her husband.
"Why is he here?" Toby said quietly, as he looked back at his mother, who reached to open the car door.
He's your father, Toby. He's here because he wants to see you," his mother responded with a monotone voice trying to sound less shaky.
Yet he couldn't have driven up to the hospital to see Lyra before she died. Toby narrowed his eyes out the window.
He was drunk that night, honey. He couldn't drive.
When is he not? Toby pushed open the door before his mother and stumbled out onto the driveway, where he met his father's gaze before looking down at his feet with a stern expression.
His mother stepped out behind him and met her husband's eyes before walking around the car.
His father opened up his arms, expecting a hug from his wife, but she walked past him and put her arms around Toby's shoulder and influenced him to begin walking inside.
"Connie!" her husband began to say in a raspy voice. "What, no welcome home hug, huh?"
She ignored her husband's obnoxious words and walked past him with her son under her arm.
She ignored her husband's obnoxious words. And, hey, he's 16. He can walk by himself. His father began to borrow them in. He's 17. Connie glared back at him before opening the door to the house and stepping inside.
Toby, why don't we get you in your room to rest, okay? I'll come get you when dinner is ready.
No, I'm 16. I can walk by myself, Toby said sarcastically, and glared back at his father before stumbling up the small staircase, turning into his room where he slammed the door violently.
His lit room didn't have much in it, just a small bed, a dresser, a window, and his walls had a few framed pictures of his family back when they were a family.
Before his father became an alcoholic and started acting violently towards the rest of the family, Toby remembered when he was arguing with his mother and he tried to grab her by the hair and shoved her to the floor. And when Lyra had tried to break it up, he pushed her and hit her back on the corner of the kitchen counter. Toby could never forgive him for what he did to his mother and sister. Never.
Toby didn't care how much his father beat him down. He couldn't feel it anyway. What he did care about was how he intentionally hurt the only two people he had cared about.
And when he was waiting in the hospital, where his sister took her last few breaths, the only person who didn't rush there was his dad.
Toby stood by the window and looked out onto the street. He could have sworn he saw things out of the corner of his eye, but quickly blamed it on the medication he had been put on.
When dinner time had come around, his mother called him up. Toby came down the stairs and hesitantly sat down at the table, across from his father and in between his mother and an empty chair.
It was quiet at his parents' house. His parents picked at their food, but Toby... It was quiet as his parents picked at their food, but Toby refused to eat. Instead, he just watched his dad with a blank stare.
His mother caught on to his stare towards his father and elbowed him slightly. Toby looked over at her slightly and looked down at his only food, in which he didn't touch.
Toby laid in bed. He pulled his cover over his head and stared at the window. He was tired, but there was no way he could fall asleep. He couldn't. There was too much to think about. He had been debating on whether or not to follow his mother's directions and forgive his father, or continue holding a grudge with his boiling hatred.
He heard his door creak open, his mother padding into the room, and sat on the bed next to him. She reached over and rubbed his back, which had been turned to her.
I know it's hard, Toby. Trust me, I understand, but I promise you it will get better, she said softly.
When is he going to leave? Toby said, with an innocent-like tone in his shaky voice.
Connie let her gaze fall down to her feet. I don't know, honey. He's staying as far as I know, she replied.
Toby didn't respond. He just continued to look forward at the wall, holding his damaged arm near his chest.
After a few minutes of silence, his mother sighed before she leaned in to kiss him his cheek and stood up to walk out of the room. Good night, she said as she closed the door.
The hours passed slowly, and Toby couldn't quit tossing and turning. Every time he let his imagination take over, he heard the screeching of tires, the screaming of his sister, and he could uncontrollably jerk in his bed. He threw off his covers, laying on his back. He pulled his pillow over his face and cried into it. He would feel his chest rise and fall, as he let out each shaky breath as he cried. He could not hear his own pitiful weeping. He would have been screaming or crying if he didn't press his pillow over his face.
After a few seconds, he threw a pillow off his face as well and sat up and hunched over, holding his head and breathing roughly, tears streaming from his eyes. He couldn't help but cry. He tried to, and he couldn't help but as he sat there, shaking. He inhaled before he stood up and walked around his bed to the deep breath, trying to calm down. He rubbed his eyes and looked out at the across the street.